all the boys love to be friends with her, but nobody like sees her as a love interest and nobody wants to date her. And that sucks because she's a debutante and her whole thing is like needing to get married. And her family is a really sweet family. They seem like a very loving family, the Bridgerton family. And there's 8 children, so there gotta be some love in there for 8 children to happen. Am I right? Hello, and welcome back to Embodying Mystical Mac. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining. If you are coming back, thank you so much for returning. Today we have a fun episode/video where I just talk about my thoughts on The Duke and I, which is the first book in the Bridgerton series. Yes, this is why if you're watching on YouTube, I am like trying to cosplay, but I have 0 Regency era stuff, so this is the best I could come up with. Yeah, the Regency era is just like not one of my favorite time periods, so I probably won't be getting anything for it either. I am going to be going to the Bridgerton ball for one of my friend's birthdays, but I'm just going to kind of like put something together out of the stuff that I already have, and I'm confident I can make it look like I can make it fit. Plus, it's like nobody's going to dress code you, you know what I mean? Like, I paid for this experience. That was my Alexa letting me know that it's time to plan dinner. She is so cute. Because I don't eat till later. Anyhow, yeah, so it's like I'm gonna, do it all up for the ball, the Bridgerton ball experience. And I'm confident it'll look somewhat era appropriate. It'll probably be closer to like what the Queen wore or whatever, Miss Danbury. I don't know. I've only listened to the book, so I don't know show-wise. Like, the lady who wears, like, the large gowns, the large wigs, it's probably going to be closer to what she's wearing than what, like, Daphne or any of them ever wear, because I just hate those dresses. They literally, for an entire era, women just wore maternity dresses, and I'm like, why? Why? Why did we do away with the beautiful, like, sculpted bodices? Like, why did I just lose my waist for an entire era as a woman? I don't understand that era of fashion. So no, I refuse to buy those dresses. But because the only thing really they did was like make your boobs look good, and that's not even the dress. It's the corset underneath it. So not only you're wearing like a really, clearly this tangent isn't done. Not only you're wearing like a really free-flowing dress that's supposed to be really comfortable, no, you're incredibly uncomfortable underneath. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck this shit. If I'm gonna be uncomfortable in my everyday wear, I might as well look fucking good, okay? You might as well show what my body looks like under that corset. Yes, by showing my whole fucking figure instead of those stupid little Regency maternity dresses. I have a lot more anger towards those dresses than I thought. Wow. Reflection on that another day. So this is my poor cosplay attempt, but we're going with it. I gave myself a little tiara because, we're talking about a duke. So Daphne probably has some really cute tiaras in her Duchess jewelry box. Yeah, that was a real long intro tangent. Here we go. If you're still here, thank you. Yes, I'm on my road to my first 1,000 subscribers, so it would be a great joy for me if you would click that subscribe button, click the like button once you come to the end of this video or get far enough and realize, hey, this is cool. And please consider clicking the bell because I post regularly, but I don't post on a schedule. So it's really helpful if you want to know exactly when I post. And lastly, before we get into the video, episode, I am conducting tarot readings. You can find me on calendly.com/mysticalmac. It's here on the screen, or it'll be in the description in the podcast, as well as on YouTube. And yeah, you can book a tarot reading. Right now I'm asking for $20 donations, but you can really donate whatever you feel is right. And the reading will be a 30-minute reading where we will imbue the cards with a question, with the energies that we've provided, and they can show you clearly what you got going on and some ways to move forward. Yeah, okay. Let's get into it. I will start with a spoiler-free review as per usual. It was a fun read, all right? I can't speak for the show, but if the show is as fun as the book is, it's a pretty fun show. The whole Lady Whistledown thing is really interesting, very Gossip Girl-esque, and I know that plenty of people have already said this when the first season of Bridgerton, the show, came out. But yeah, it was fun. It was also heartfelt, and in my opinion had a really profound theme and underlying meaning to the story. The characters were compelling and realistic, and as much as, we still had some of that not like other girls thing going on with Daphne as a character, it didn't feel pushed. A lot of the times that is really, really heavily pushed by the girl consistently commenting on how she's not like other girls or isn't treated like other girls or whatever. But in this, it got brought up when it was appropriate, and then it just wasn't brought up otherwise, which made that trope not be such an overbearing thing, because I definitely feel like it can heavily undercut the story. Because it just gives you zero expectations for the protagonist to be like at all interesting. So anything she ends up doing is incredibly interesting. Yeah, didn't feel that way. Daphne actually felt like a real person. Their thing that they had, their little fling thing that they had, all of it felt very realistic. And I think that's what made it even more fun to read and listen to. So yeah, it's worth a listen. If you're looking for something fun to listen to, and you want something a little steamy, a little spicy to get you through, check these books out. I will be doing a review on the second one. I totally forget what it's called. It's like the Viscount and something, but it's like a longer title than The Duke and I, but I still have to wait for it because I'm getting these through the library app, and lo and behold, these books are very popular right now. So we're going to wait on the Viscount and What's Her Face working title until I read the title again and remember it. So look out for that. But I like that this is a complete sort of story within the series. I didn't expect this. I honestly thought that we were going to be dealing with Daphne and Simon kind of like for a few books at least. And it's kind of cool that like they have, their thing, and there's the conflict and there's resolution. And yeah, it makes me excited to see what the rest of the series is about. Spoiler-free review done. From this point forward, I will be spoiling things, so leave if you don't want that. Okay, here we go. Let's start with a little bit of a plot breakdown. Yeah, my expectations were very subverted by the progression of this plot. I had no idea that that's how it was going to go. I genuinely thought that it was going to be like Daphne and Simon like courting back and forth until eventually like there came a time to, stereotypical rom-com reveal where like, well, basically you have to marry her now or she has to choose between someone else. I don't know. Like I was definitely thinking it was going to be way more predictable. And I was totally subverted by the fact that they actually married like in chapter 2 or 3 or something like that. I don't know. I think before chapter 5 they were married, which is crazy. Or at least it felt like it was before chapter 5. Very early on. very early on they were married, and I was like, whoa. So that's a note about the plot. Let's go into it, right? So we started off with Simon's origin story, basically, right? We learn about his mother and his dad and how it was really, really difficult for them to conceive, and how his mom basically like killed herself trying to have this child, and because she had so many miscarriages, you know, she had a few like stillborn. She clearly had some sort of reproductive issue, and the doctors even told them to stop trying, but to the compassionless Duke's delight, she did her duchess duties and kept trying till she literally bore a son and died. Woo. God, this man, literally despicable. He is just not a good human, okay? Which, like, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of nobility in that time probably weren't great people. I'm not saying all or even a majority, because how am I supposed to know? But just of what I know about psychology and, you know, the fact that these people were were likely, as most of them didn't marry into that position, they were born into that position, likely very privileged and acted in such a way. And so, and because of their high stature and position, people wouldn't correct them, right? So they wouldn't actually have a chance to learn. So then that generational bullshit just gets passed on and on and on and on and on. Simon had the pleasure of getting to know what a shit his father was from the very beginning, because he was a child who had trouble speaking. He had a speaking impediment in the form of a very, very severe stutter. And his father literally called him an imbecile and literally just disowned him, and like basically told the governess, like, just make sure I don't ever see this kid again. Like, you can keep your job. He can still live here. I'm not going to like throw him out in the street or anything, or you, but like, I just do whatever you need to do to keep him out of my way. That is his father. In spite, you know, and this boy, Simon, as a boy, worked incredibly hard to get to a point where he was properly speaking, to eventually be worth something to his father, right? So freaking sad. Oh, God, listening to that part genuinely broke me. Yeah. He was just, yeah, he was not a compassionate man, and it led Simon to be a really traumatized kid, right? Be completely rejected and abandoned by his own father, and even after working super hard to be something his father could be proud of, his father just didn't give him, like, the time of day. And by the time that he did give him the time of day, it was too fucking late, right? Like, and his father, spoiler alert, being the man that he was, didn't even acknowledge how horrendous of a father he was. He didn't even acknowledge before he died. Like, So yeah, Simon, essentially, we learned that instead of being a son his father could be proud of, right? Being an heir his father could be proud of, he aimed to do the exact opposite. And that is what his life goal became, to be the opposite of an heir his father could be proud of. So he would be a womanizer, right? He would never marry. He would never have children, because then that would mean passing the dukedom along. This is how he lived. And this is how we learn that he comes to be. And I think it's a really brilliant way to start the book like that, because we are given so much information that becomes information that Daphne doesn't know, right? That Antony doesn't know. The people that end up being the closest to Simon. And we know, and we're just, as the audience, just like, oh my God, as the reader, right? Being like, Simon, just tell her what's going on. Like, healing's hard. But it's a brilliant way to start. So we find out about Simon, we know everything we need to know about him, and now we move on to Daphne Bridgerton, which is that not like other not like other girl, who all the boys love to be friends with her, but nobody like sees her as a love interest and nobody wants to date her. And that sucks because she's a debutante and her whole thing is like needing to get married, and her family is a really sweet family. They seem like a very loving family, the Bridgerton family, and there's 8 children, so there gotta be some love in there for 8 children to happen, am I right? And they don't want her to marry out of necessity of needing to be married, right? Because they're not hurting for money, but they don't want her to marry without love. So it's kind of taken Daphne a little bit, because without the boys really seeing her, the ones that she wants to see her not really seeing her in that way, between them and then the boys that do see her that she doesn't really want to be seen by in that way, it's rough times, right? It's rough times. But fear not, because the Duke of Hastings comes into town, Lady Whistledown wants to tell us. And Lady Whistledown, right? Like, I'm not entirely sure I needed Lady Whistledown. I definitely expected her to be a much bigger part of this than she actually was. She really was just like a couple paragraphs before each chapter, letting us know what society was reading about these people before we got into their personal point of views. So I'm not saying it was invaluable and that this wasn't needed, in the sense that, like, this is obviously what made Bridgerton stand out among these stories, I would say. It was just a really interesting thing to create, like, a period piece version of a Gossip Girl site thing. But I guess, like, I suppose because I went into it having known the show was really popular, having Julie Andrews' iconic voice for Lady Whistledown in my head, like, all of that, which granted I didn't see like all of the first season. I just saw like, I think, half of the first episode, but I think I just expected it to be as big of a thing in the books as it was in the show, meaning it would take up more time and space in the books, but it didn't, which was fine. I honestly believe that we didn't need more of Lady Whistledown. It was just one of those things that, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I was disappointed that there wasn't more of her. Because the point of view was actually really interesting. And I could just see these people in this time period just like quaking in their boots. Because genuinely, if you're in that society, like, and if you're in high society like that, like, that's all that mattered. All that shit was all that mattered. And especially for these girls, like these young women, like their livelihoods literally were at stake. Because if they didn't marry, they would just live in their family homes till whatever age, and become old maids, and the psychological trauma of like being seen and pitied like that in your neighborhood. Like, I don't know, man. It's just rough times. So I get it. Lady Whistledown let us know that the Duke of Hastings is coming into town, right? And he's a big deal and yada yada. And it turns out that Antony is actually besties with Simon, the Duke of Hastings. Because, the Duke died. His dad died. So he came back into town after his dad died and occupied Hastings' house. And, he's in town. Everybody wants him. But obviously he's got this whole pact with himself that he doesn't want to marry and he's not going to have children to spite his father, because if he gets married and, lives happily with a wife and has children, his dead father will just really have one. I say all this shit sarcastically, but like, real talk, like, childhood trauma's fucked up like that, right? It doesn't actually make any sense, because you would think that like proving your father wrong and I guess really sticking it to him even in the grave would be like you becoming the most successful duke ever and having more children than he ever could have ever possibly tried to bear, like basically outdoing him in the life game, being the happiest, most prosperous person you could possibly be. That's how you really stick it to your enemies, in my opinion. By just not letting them dictate your life, right? But when it comes to childhood trauma and our parental figures, that shit can take a lot of unwinding, but even more difficult, even in a more difficult, how do I say this? But even more so, it takes noticing, and to notice it, right? To notice, oh, my father's running my life because of this anger I have towards him that's basically making it so even if I want a wife, I vow to myself to never get one. Even if I want kids, I vow to myself to never have them. All of my decisions are going to be made with these two things in mind because I'm so damn angry at my father for not loving me the way that he should have. Like, it takes noticing that pattern. Most people go through their whole lives and they don't notice that pattern. And that's what makes romantic relationships really difficult, because the people you're in a relationship with will notice that pattern because they're outside of you. They will notice something. And these are the things that if we don't address properly, and work on, be it in therapy or, if you're doing therapeutic stuff on your own to work on it, shadow work, whatever, if we don't work on these things, they can crumble our relationships, or especially our romantic partnerships, which is kind of what ends up almost happening to Simon and Daphne, right? So back to the plot. Basically, Simon and Daphne end up meeting in a really interesting turn of events where she gets nearly taken advantage of. I shouldn't say that because she wasn't the inebriated one, but she gets basically nearly essayed by this dude. And after she already punches him in the face, by the way, which, God, dude, get a hint. But anyway, Simon ends up having to step in and help. It's a whole thing. They meet. Daphne ends up having this brilliant idea. I don't know if it's Daphne's idea, Simon's idea. But Daphne basically, like, Anthony had already warned him, but Daphne also warns Simon of, like, the debutante moms and how he's not going to be left alone because, he's a duke and everybody wants their daughter to marry him or whatever. And they come up with this plan that they're going to fake a courtship so that moms and people will, for the most part, leave Simon alone because they think he's otherwise occupied with Daphne already. And so that Daphne, in having caught the attention of a duke, will in turn have the men that don't see her as a potential mate have their minds a little bit shaken about that, right? Because if the duke noticed something special in her, then they must have overlooked something. And lo and behold, it actually works. Like, this thing that they do works. For the most part, people think that he's otherwise engaged, so people for the most part leave him alone. And for sure, Daphne has way more suitors than she did before, which, humans, am I right? I'm not even gonna say men, because, like, girls are the same way. Like, think about it. You see, I don't know, you're at a party and you there's this guy that's trying to hit you up and he's, like, cute or whatever, but you're not really into it. And then the second your, like, friend or maybe, like, one of the really hot girls in the room or whatever walks up to them and starts to, like, flirt and whatever, then all of a sudden you start to go, oh, maybe I overlooked something. Humans. Yeah. It's all going dandy until one night where they are at a party, at a little soiree, and Daphne irresponsibly leads Simon into the garden. Yes, this was obviously Daphne's fault. Oh my God, girl. Leads Simon into the garden, and I was shooketh to my core because, I mean, I knew the show was racy and, you know, was all like spicy and stuff and had people doing spicy things, but I didn't know the books were like that. I had no idea. I had no idea until Daphne's tits were just out and Simon's basically about to like chomp on one of them, and all of a sudden Anthony catches the two of them. Oh my God, the secondhand embarrassment I felt for Daphne. Oh girl, I'm so sorry. That's gotta be rough, especially in that time period. It's rough in this time period where, like, you know, we're no longer, for the most part, can't speak for every culture in the world, but for the most part, we're decently liberated in that way, in the sense that, like, yeah, we still have, like, slut shaming and a lot of still expecting women to be, you know, both Madonnas and whores. Like, the problems are not over. The misogyny's not over. It's all still there. But we have come a long way in the sense that if you're at a house party and people are off in a room or a bathroom is locked, you just leave that be, you know? And if you do walk into something that I guess you're not supposed to because the door was unlocked, or I don't know, you opened a closet door you thought was a bathroom, whatever, like, we just like, okay, cool, we just leave it be. There's no judgment here, whatever. But in that time period, like, oh, girl, I was cringing with her. Poor Daphne Bridgerton deserves so much better. So anyway, that quickly divulges into let's duel Anthony and Simon. And Simon, of course, being like, of course, like, I knew the risks of this. This is how I'm going to die. I thought I would go out in a more fun way, but yeah, okay, sure. Because I'm not going to shoot Anthony, and Anthony is definitely going to shoot Simon, because if he doesn't shoot Simon, then it's like dishonoring his sister, and it's like, oh my God, it's a whole freaking thing. So long story short, Daphne convinces Simon and Anthony and everybody else that Simon should just marry her, and Simon being sneaky, lying through omission, says he can't have kids, which Daphne really wants to have kids. But obviously she wants to be able to love Simon more. She wants to, she wants him to live more than she, wants these arbitrary kids. She needs him to be alive because she's come to the realization that she really loves him, and that she would be silly if she didn't marry him, and she knows that he loves her too. And there's actually a really beautiful part in that book where she says that the kids are these things that she can't see, whereas like Simon is right there and he's real, and she would rather have a life with him than work towards a life with arbitrary children with a person that she knows will never be him. So that was really beautiful. And, because she's ignorant about everything, she assumes that he can't have kids, meaning he's incapable, sterile, instead of just that he won't. And this soon comes to light via Daphne's very intelligent mind putting things together. When they go to Simon's childhood home to spend their honeymoon, and she introduces herself to everybody, and the head housekeeper, I forget what the main... I don't know what the role exactly is called, but she's like the head governess of the house. And Daphne learns about the abuse and the neglect from the Duke towards Simon and all of that. And not only that, but the governess says something that makes her think, and it's that oh yes, she was defending Simon's mother, and she said that Simon's mother was just the most glorious woman, the kindest woman, and if she had lived, that his life would have been very different. And that is so sad, isn't it? But she says something in defense of Simon's mom, because as much as it could have been her, I mean, I even said at the beginning she likely had some sort of reproductive issues. It could just as well have been the Duke, right? I only assume on the reproductive issues because of how many stillborns and she delivered and how many miscarriages she had, because it did seem like her womb would take the seed, but it just like wouldn't, it was difficult growing to full term and stuff like that. But hey, the seed could be damaged as well. Like, who knows? And that's kind of what the governess alludes to. And she says, the womb won't quicken without fertile seed. And Daphne holds on to this little sentence in her head because her mother literally prepared her in the worst way possible, meaning she did not prepare her at all for her wedding night, for the consummation of her marriage. Like, she literally knew nothing. Like, poor girl. And I love that in the, I don't know if it's the first epilogue or the second epilogue, because these books actually have 2 epilogues apparently, or at least this one did, that I believe the character or the author wrote in later. And it's basically just like looking ahead into the future and what the lives of these characters are now or then. And at that point we touch on them having teenagers for kids, and like their girls are basically already marrying age, if not almost to marrying age. And Simon makes a joke about how their kids will hear them doing the thing, and Daphne says something, and then Simon goes like, well, they wouldn't know what it was if it wasn't for you. And Daphne goes, well, I'm not letting them go into marriage as unprepared as I was. Like, screw that. And I'm like, you know what? Power to you, Daphne. Hell to the yeah. But yeah, she knew nothing. So every time Simon essentially pulled out, and made sure that none of his stuff got inside her, she didn't fully know what it meant until one day she knew what it meant. After gathering all the information in her head, right? Her mind just putting stuff together and being realizing that he said he couldn't have children, and realizing that how it had everything to do with he wouldn't have children because of the way his father treated him and how he didn't want to give his father the satisfaction of passing on the Duke down. And this becomes a big stick in their relationship. I'm realizing this entire video is basically going to be the plot, which is fine because there's 3 notes after that. Which this actually becomes a thing, right? So she realizes one day that he is spilling his seed, quote, quote. That's the thing that makes her think of the thing the governess told her, outside of her every time, literally rushing to get out and make sure it gets nowhere near her, right? Which I don't know if he knows, but that method is not the most effective, so it would probably fail eventually. But yeah, okay, sure, Simon, sure. Daphne gets upset and confronts him and is like, I know what you're doing. You lied to me. You took advantage of my ignorance about all this stuff, and you told me you couldn't have kids, and it means that you won't have kids, and this is crappy. And Simon defends till the end of time that she was well informed. She knew about this. She knew he wouldn't have kids, yada yada. But of course, Daphne is a really emotionally intelligent girl. Intelligent in general, but definitely emotionally intelligent, and she realizes that all of that, may be true, but one, he still took advantage of her ignorance, which is, again, lying by omission. That was a lie by omission. He could have told her the whole truth. He could have said, listen, I'm incredible, like, I have a deep grudge for my father, and therefore I refuse to pass on the dukedom. So I do not want children. I will not have children. Marry me knowing this, right? And he didn't do that, which is kind of good that he didn't, because it actually opened up room for healing to actually happen, in the sense that by having to figure it out this way, that he lied via omission, Daphne came to a solid conclusion that this withholding of information in that pivotal time, if he could do that, then maybe she could withhold something from him too. Now, in my opinion, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but it ended up working out in their favor, although in a really, really messy manner, which we're just about to get into. So yeah, Daphne decides to take up home in the Duchess's chambers, because this is, there were 2 different chambers. Noble people apparently didn't share rooms, or at least not the ones that, weren't like truly in love or whatever, which I guess that's nice to have that option if you just married for titles, I guess. I don't know. So she took up, she makes her home in the Duchess's chambers, and Simon basically orders her to go back to his chambers, and she goes, no, if you can withhold your seed from me, then I can withhold myself from you, and I will do so until the day you decide to kick your father out of the bed with us. And he goes, what? Blah, blah, blah. What? And she's like, literally every time you rush to cut off the connection with me so that you make sure your seed gets nowhere near my womb, your father slips right into bed with us. And I was like, you go, girl. You go, Daphne, calling out his bullshit, calling out his childhood trauma bullshit. Childhood trauma is not bullshit, but calling out the bullshit that he's doing in reaction to his childhood trauma that he's not even fully aware that he's doing. Like, he's aware that he's doing it, but like on the deep level of like, this actually doesn't serve me and I'm just being miserable, because it's not like he had this like well thought out conclusion, like, no, kids aren't for me, man. It's like, no, because my father wanted me to have kids, I won't. Because he wanted the dukedom to be passed so bad, I won't. Because it's a pendulum swing, okay? It's not, you're just bouncing off of one thing, going to another. You're just as deterministic if you were going, it would be just as deterministic if you were going, well, I'm going to have more kids than my father ever did. Like, I don't even care. It's like, yeah, that's not a good way to go either, right? So Daphne realizes that this kind of living is not helping him, and she doesn't want to be a part of it, and she still feels really wronged. Anyway, Simon goes to get drunk, comes back. They end up having like a spicy interaction that leads him to actually put his seed where it's supposed to go, if you know what I mean. He gets really upset, begins to, and I should disclaim this, Daphne did not take advantage of him. It was a situation that kind of like evolved, and because he was, super drunk, she ended up like writing him. And he just, he didn't have like the time or energy to do what he normally does. So he gets really upset, and his stutter even like comes back. He goes away from her basically and leaves her a letter saying he had some urgent affairs in his other estate, and if her efforts are successful, to send him a letter and he'll instruct her further, like some very bullshit avoidant shit. And, Daphne, being the strong girl she is, she just picks herself up, is sad and miserable, does her thing, thinks she conceived, so she goes back to Hastings' house in London and sends him a letter. When he gets the letter, he's given the letter by Anthony, who went to see Daphne, and she didn't tell him what was going on exactly. And I think Anthony even she even puts Anthony in his place. or something about like, oh no, that's later. She puts all her brothers in their place, and so does her mother. It's great. About meddling in Daphne's affairs, marital affairs, when they really not their business, right? And Anthony basically just goes like, hey dude, like, people are talking and it's not good, but even if people weren't talking, like, just go back home to your wife, please. Like, you know. So, to his credit, Simon does. Finds out the day he arrives. It's very early morning. He goes to Bridgerton house first and is like, where's my wife? And then everybody's like, yo, she's at your place. And he goes, oh, well, fuck. And he goes to the place, and turns out that she went riding, like horseback riding. Now, I know what you're thinking. She's pregnant. She's not supposed to be horseback riding. Turns out she's not pregnant. She did that thing where she wanted to be pregnant so bad that her body actually delayed her period. That happens. Don't know how often, don't know the stats of that, but that actually happens. And it's pretty fascinating. So that happened, and she was riding to get her feelings out. And it eventually turns into this whole thing where they have a very deep talk, and Simon says that he wants her back, that he doesn't want to live under his father's shadow in that way. He doesn't want to let his father dictate his life, yada yada, and that he is willing to have kids with her because he loves her, and he just wants to be with her again. And of course, she feels the exact same about him, loves him dearly. Of course, tells him, I'm sorry that if you felt I took advantage of you in that way, in any way, and all that good stuff. And even when he says the thing about like wanting to have kids with her, she asks him if he's sure. Like, it's very sweet. It's really cute, and the epilogues are really sweet too. We get to learn more about their kids that they have, and we even get to learn a little bit more about what turns out to be Colin and Penelope's kid, who has similar speech issues, and they come to Simon and Daphne for advice, and Simon's advice is just lovely, and it's that, and it's like a really cute button to the end of his arc that just shows that he's really learned his lesson, and he's really gotten the most out of the bag of shit he was handed in his childhood. And he says to just love him, right? To just keep talking to him and keep, take him out like fathers do, and just love him and give him the life of any that you would want to give any child who speaks, right? And if he speaks, he speaks. And if he doesn't, just love him. And yeah, that was very, very sweet. Very sweet read. Lastly, I've just got a few notes, and then we are off. Yeah, so again, super cool that my expectations were so subverted. That plot was way more interesting than I gave it credit for going in. I love the theme of childhood trauma healing, and how if you don't, it can severely run your adult life in ways that you may not see are hurting you, but they are. And that the only way to really heal from relationship trauma is in relationship. Now, don't get me wrong, especially for certain types of relationship trauma, it's very important to have a period where you are alone and cultivating a relationship with yourself, but there will always come a point where you need to heal in the scope of a relationship to fully heal those things that were hurt in a relationship. So that was really cool how we actually saw that happen through Simon and Daphne's relationship, right? They're a really good example of an avoidant and secure relationship attachment, meaning one person has a secure relationship attachment style, the other person has an avoidant attachment style, right? Daphne having grown up in a happy home, in a loving family, with brothers, which help, right? Because in that day and age, if all you grew up around are women and sisters, and the only male figures you had were your father and your uncles or whatever, your cousins, people that you wouldn't necessarily be as close with as your siblings, you're probably even more prone to being that like meek, docile, really don't have a large chance of finding out who you truly are in your own strength, in your own right. Whereas like when you have, like, I believe that in having brothers and being a girl in that day and age, Daphne had a really large advantage to the fact that, one, right, she had to learn to roughhouse. So she was really good at protecting herself in that SA situation, and really only needed Simon's intervention when the advance from the obviously like larger person than her became physically difficult for her to deal with. But not only that, like in having those brothers and having been able to cultivate her own masculine energy in that way alongside her feminine energy, she is even more well-rounded and has the capacity to really understand Simon and be there for Simon via having dealt with her brothers, right? Especially Anthony, who seems to be a large parallel to Simon in personalities and stuff. And that's cool. It's a really cool show of the secure and avoidant attachment style. Ideally, if you have an avoidant attachment style, a disorganized attachment style, or an anxious attachment style, it's the most beneficial for you to be with somebody that has a secure attachment style. It will make friction in the relationship a lot less of a thing, because one of the people hopefully has healthy and productive ways of communicating and can, hopefully help the other person in their journey of healing their ways of communicating and relating, via modeling and things like that, because they themselves have a secure attachment style. They also have really good humor in their relationship, like just very realistic again. I love their humor. My favorite joke between them was that when Daphne was pregnant, she asked Simon if she looked radiant or if she looked like a waddling duck, and he said she looked like a radiant duck, and I thought that was very funny, but very cute and like obviously super loving. They have the sweetest family by the end of the second epilogue, which is awesome. And and those silly letters, man, the letters that Simon's father leaves for him, no emotional value whatsoever. Man, what a void human that guy was. Jesus. Let's see. It's compelling, right? The book is compelling. It's schmexy. I totally get the appeal, and I am really stoked for book 2. I'm also really stoked for the Bridgerton ball experience. It's going to be really fun. Any excuse that I get to put on my like weird medieval cosplay stuff is welcome, even this sad attempt that I gave out here today. And yeah, I'm sure I will be documenting the Bridgerton ball experience somewhat. It'll be in August. I'm sure I'll be documenting that on my social media, so go ahead and follow me. The links have shown up here. They're also below in the description. And if you're interested in this video, then you'll likely be interested in my other videos. So click subscribe. It helps me out a lot, especially on my road to my first 1,000 subscribers, and therefore to getting this channel monetized. And it would make me really, 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 really appreciative. So, not that I'm not already, honestly. Lastly, if you are so called, go ahead and click the link in the description below for a tarot reading. You can also type this link up here into your browser, calendly.com/mysticalmac. I am doing tarot readings for a suggestion of $20, but you can donate whatever you see fit. And I have a few readings a week available, so go ahead and book one of them through the link. And I will see you next time. Stay mystical, stay grounded. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you for supporting that platform. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Okay, now stay mystical, stay grounded. I'll see you next time.